Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for the 100 Season 4 Episodes 1 and 2. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review episodes of the 100. This video is where I cover the first two episodes of Season 4, Echoes and Heavy is the Crown. So I have to start by giving a spoiler warning for the 100 up to Season 4, Episode 2. If you haven't seen up to this point, you may not want to watch this video, otherwise some things may be spoiled for you. So this was an interesting start to the season. I can't really say these episodes have me terribly excited for Season 4, but it does leave me a bit curious to see where they'll go with this, as I'm still a bit uncertain of what the main storyline of Season 4 will be. I really hope it's not another conflict with the Grounders, as the main complaint I have about these first two episodes is that it seems to just rehash the whole conflict between Sky Crew and the Grounders, and that, I believe, has already been done to death. I did find the inner politics within the Grounders society very interesting, and it's not interesting that Sky Crew is now part of that, so it'll be even more interesting, but I'm not sure if these first two episodes handled it the best. So Season 4 begins right where Season 3 left off, with almost everyone from Arcadia at the Grounders' capital, which is recovering from the devastation left by Allie and her City of the Light followers. And the Grounders all decide that this disaster was Sky Crew's fault. Now, this particular storyline isn't out of character for the Grounders. In fact, I'd say it's totally consistent with the way they have been behaving since the beginning, but it's a bit too consistent, because the problem I have with the storyline is that I've seen it on the show a billion times before. I'm quite sick of seeing the Grounders react irrationally towards our heroes from the space station. Just seems like a rehash of what we've seen a billion times before. However, I will accept it has a jumping off point into a different storyline, but if the whole season is just about the Grounders constantly being on the verge of attacking Sky Crew, I don't think it's going to be very good. But I have hope that this is just a jumping off point into another storyline. And as I said, even though this is in the Grounders' character to react irrationally towards Sky Crew, it is irrational, as they may have brought Allie into their village. They were just victims just the same as they were, and it was in fact their princess, the Grounders princess, that ordered all the Grounders to take the key. It was, the Ice Nation who's the one placing all the blame. It was their fault. It was their princess who, told everyone to take this key, so why not blame her? And of course, as Kane and the others constantly point out, they may have brought the key, but they also are the ones who defeated Allie. And they were at just as big as risk and just as much affected as anyone else. So yeah, this storyline annoys me, just like every other storyline in the previous 3 seasons where the Grounders irrationally want to attack Sky Crew annoyed me. And that's because it's just an obvious excuse by the script to artificially create conflict. However, the interesting dynamic here is that it's inner politics within the Grounders, and not all of the clans agreed to this. I like how when Echo tried to lead Ice Nation to take over the leadership, the ambassador stepped in and tried to stop her, but I didn't like how all they had to do was just kill the ambassador to stop that. That was boring. I also liked how Indra was allied with Sky Crew in trying to stop them, and how she talked about many other clans following them. So rather than just a rehash of Grounders versus Sky Crew, it's actually a civil war within the Grounder community, which is slightly more interesting. And I have a feeling that that might be what Season 4 is building to, but I still hope that they introduce a new and fresh element to the season, as although a civil war would be interesting, I don't think it would be different enough from what we've already seen. And then we get the real reason for the storyline when it is revealed that Charles Vane, King Roan, is still alive. Okay, so this seems like another really contrived, oh, they're still alive BS storyline. Not as bad, but in the same vein as the Sarah Tancredi being brought back to life in season 4 of Prison Break. Because it's obvious to me that when Roan died in season 3, he actually died, and the show intended to kill him off. What I think happened is once the showrunners realized that the actor's character in Black Sails was killed off, that means he was free to play King Roan, and they really, like the actor and want to capitalize on him, so they were really regretting their decision to kill him off, so they're just like, oh, let's just act like he never died, and people will buy it. And it is very contrived. I don't buy it for an instant. However, I do agree that they never should have killed him off in the first place, and the show is going to be more interesting with him around. But they did kill him off. But I still can't help but think of him as Captain Vane from Black Sails, as their characters are very similar, but it is weird to hear him talk in an American accent, even though I know that's that actor's actual accent. So I like how it was Clark and Abby's ultimate plan to save Charles Vane, King Roan, and once they did, he wanted to kill them anyway. That was cool, and it took Clark telling him about the impending nuclear holocaust to stop him. And it does bring up an interesting dynamic going forward where Roan is the king, barely holding the Grounders together, but there's a lot of dissent and mistrust amongst them. And so Kane and the others must work to keep him in power, while Clark and Bellamy go off looking for a way to survive the incoming nuclear holocaust. So that is quite interesting. So my rating for Echoes out of 10 is a 7, very good. An interesting enough episode, like most of the 100. Overall, it manages to come off as awesome and a bit subpar at the same time. Parts of this episode I loved, other parts annoyed me, like the contrived resurrection of Charles Vane. But overall, I'd say it was a good episode, and the season could build off of it to something good, but we'll see. So next, let's get into episode 2, Heavy is the Crown. Now, first off, I gotta say, this is a great title for this episode because all the themes seem to build around this one central theme, where it's a story about King Roan trying to keep the crown and it being challenged, while at the same time it's about Clark learning to make tough decisions, to lie to people, what to tell people, and also Bellamy has to make a command decision, so it's sort of tied into all three storylines, which I really loved. So it builds off how fragile King Roan's hold is over the clans, and it was rather interesting to see the interpolitics at play. This episode begins with an introduction to a new character, Ilion, so I hope he does become important down the line. It showed what his time was like when Ali took over and forced him to kill his brother and father and almost killed himself before his mother died. But here's a question I have about this scene. It seemed the whole point of it was because Ali wanted his mother to join her. She must have been important to her, otherwise why kill 3 other people just to get her to join? But then she just dies a few minutes later. I'm sorry, but that makes no sense. Let's assume that Clark didn't destroy Ali at this time. Well, then Ali would have accomplished nothing by forcing Ilion to act this way. All that would have been accomplished is all of them would be dead, and as evil as Ali was, her point wasn't just to kill everyone for no reason, but to save them, to get them to join the City of Light. So if they all died, that would accomplish nothing. In the past, she's only told people to kill others who were already in the City of Light, to coerce people that she really needed to join her. So why would she need this person who just died a couple of minutes later? It makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, I kind of feel about Ilion's vendetta against Sky Crew the same way I feel about the whole Grounders blaming them for Ali. It's irrational and stupid. But if this is leading to an interesting character arc with Ilion, which very well may be the case, then it does make his character storyline worthwhile, as this could be used as an interesting jumping off point for the character to have an interesting character arc, which is where I think they're headed. Because they started off this episode focusing on this character, but he wasn't featured much at all later on in the episode, so I believe they are setting him up to be important to the season overall, and I do think there are interesting ways they could do this. So the storyline with the ambassador that wanted to challenge Roan for leadership was interesting. As I said, I like the internal conflicts amongst the 13 clans. However, it is interesting that Ice Nation gained leadership by randomly killing an ambassador and saying that they now have power. Now all of a sudden Roan is insistent that he needs the ambassadors. So which is it? Do they have no power or do they have power? Anyway, despite some flaws, I did ultimately like this storyline, and the resolution to it was interesting and a bit unexpected. And it was simply Octavia killing that dude that wanted to challenge him and making it look like a heart attack. I did not see that coming, so it was cool. But let me just say, I really don't like this Echo character. I don't like her reaction when Roan told her about the impending nuclear disaster. She's like, oh, they're just lying. And I really didn't like the whole way she behaved in the first episode either. She's coming off as a two-dimensional, mustache-twirling plot device rather than an interesting character. So I'm hoping that they either change her character to make her a bit more dynamic and not so one-note, or kill her off, because I am not a fan. Anyway, let's move on to the whole Arcadia storyline, which I think was the strong point of this episode. It was interesting to see Clark come face to face with being a leader, and how Raven and Jasper kept challenging her decision to not share the threat of the impending nuclear holocaust with everyone. And I like the parallels that were drawn with her and her father, how they wanted to make it public that the Ark was dying and her father was in fact killed because of it. And she is now on the opposite side because of the burdens of being a leader. And I love her interactions with Jaha, who pointed this out to her, as she's still angry at him for sending her and the others to the ground and for killing her father, but now she's making pretty much the same decisions, and he pointed this out to her. So that was fascinating, and I like how once she did tell everyone, she lied about it, saying that they had a plan to save everyone where clearly they don't. So that was interesting as well. And then there's the whole mission to retrieve the water reclamator, or whatever the hell that thing was, from the other station, which they needed to make their plan to survive the nuclear holocaust in the ship work. Once they arrived, they found that the survivors of that station were being used as slaves, so they presented with a moral dilemma when because they came up to a plan to rescue them, but it involves destroying the piece of equipment that they need to save the human race. So this was a fascinating moral dilemma. I love the way that it played out. I love the way that it even divided the couple of Brian and Nathan, who couldn't agree on this. It was a really valid moral dilemma as well. In order to save 25 people from a life of torturous slavery, who had to sacrifice the one piece of machinery that is essential to the only current plan that they have to save the entire human race. I think it made sense for Bellamy's character, seeing all the decisions he made that he regrets, that he couldn't stomach, to save the 25 people rather than leave them for slavery. However, as you may imagine, I did have some issues with how it was executed. First of all, the whole thing with the little girl passing the note saying, oh, we're being moved, felt incredibly contrived. Why? Well, why are they being moved? How is it that she knew to slip them a note, and how did she just so happen to know this would be the most important factor in their making the decision to save them? The thing is, Bellamy rightfully thought, well, let's just get the water thingy back to camp, and then we can go to King Roan and get him to release the slaves, which was the ideal thing to do. And the thing, it seems to me, is that the writers came up with this moral dilemma first, but then they realized that there was a flaw in this idea, as there was an easy alternative: just take the water thingy back and get Roan to free the slaves. So they introduced a note that they're being moved as an excuse to take away this alternative, and I'm sorry, but it comes off as really forced and contrived to me. And it does kind of make me dislike Bellamy and the others more, as weird as this may sound, because, those Ice Nation people were keeping slaves and killed everyone, so they're obviously not good people. It does seem to me that they trusted him because of that thing from Roan, and, they let them live and take the device, and Bellamy betrayed that trust and just killed them. Call me dumb, but there's something about that that doesn't sit right with me, which is why I personally would have voted for them to take the machine back to camp regardless of what that note said. Because even if these slaves are being moved, they could still get Roan to talk to these dudes and free the slaves regardless of where they are. And this might cause more tension between the Grinder clans that want to oust Sky Crew by killing off these dudes and make Roan's job of keeping them together even harder. So I actually think Bellamy made the wrong choice, but that's just me. So ultimately, I love this moral dilemma, and I just think the way they went about it was a tad bit contrived. However, as soon as Monty came up with this plan to save everyone using the ship, I knew it would fail because it only applies to those in Arcadia and not all of the Grinders as well, so I knew this plan wouldn't pan out. So it wasn't very surprising to me when they failed to get that water thingy. And this is the second episode of the season. We have, I believe, 13 episodes overall, so they're not going to come up with a solution to save everyone in the second episode. They're going to have a few failed attempts, and this is one of them. Not that I'm complaining, because that's fine. That is, in fact, the way the story needs to play out. So I'm completely on board with it, but I saw it coming. Because whatever the final solution is, I know it's going to involve saving the Grinders as well. Because it needs to. Because if it doesn't, then the Grinders will simply attack and kill them all. So my rating for Heavy is the Crown out of 10 is an 8, extremely good. This was a powerful episode with a great moral dilemma that divided people in powerful ways. It was also great seeing how Clark has essentially become Jaha and coming to terms with that, as well as Octavia becoming a true badass. But again, it had some plot holes and some contrived moments that I didn't quite buy. So that's it for my review of Echoes and Heavy is the Crown. Be sure to check out my channel as I continue to review episodes of the 100. However, I will not be covering it week to week. In fact, I'll just check in with Season 4 3 more times. 2 more times in the mid-season, and then again for the finale. So make sure to keep an eye out for that, as well as many more videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Black Sails, The Expanse, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.